Today's throwback, why we're having a look at the Mezco Cinema of Fear, Series 3, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, Freddy Krueger. Comes to us from The Dream Child. Ugh, what a horrible movie. Not one of my favorite Nightmare on Elm Streets by any stretch of the imagination, but this Freddy comes to us depicted from that movie. Some coined this one Chef Freddy or Waiter Freddy. I think for the most part, he is a nice looking figure, even though he's depicted, let's just move the camera up here, even though he is depicted from, if you ask me, a very horrible Nightmare on Elm Street. Let's zoom into his face. I think the face is a little more accurate to the movie than maybe some of the earlier releases of Freddy from the Cinema of Fear line. He's definitely much more sinister looking Freddy. His paint, obviously, his sculpt, obviously is a little more different than some of the earlier Nightmare on Elm Street designs of Freddy. Kind of look more like cheese by this point. You can see some of the details on his head there. Some of the accessories that come with this Freddy. For starters, he does come with an alternate hand. Now you'll notice currently I've got him with the gloved hands. You do have the option as well, and this is something actually I've mentioned on a couple of occasions already. He does have the alternate hand with the spoon. Unfortunately, it's on such a fine peg that I would say if you change this figure out his hands too often, I would be careful that these pegs don't break on you. Luckily, this Freddy has not yet. And if you're asking yourself, well, Spot, why did you do a throwback on him in the first place? You've already done a review. Well, for starters, it's one of the older reviews that I've done. The lighting and backdrop and everything else, wasn't too happy with the overall effect. Obviously, I wanted to redo these in true high def. But also one of the reasons, too, is unfortunately some of the earlier reviews I did, Spot made some indications as to things that happened that did not happen in movies. Certainly, I wanted to go back and rectify that. I think I had even mentioned that this was Freddy was holding a meatball. That made absolutely no sense. Come on, Spot. This was actually the scene when he's feeding that girl. I think she was a supermodel, but he kept feeding her and she got really, really fat. She was sitting at the dining room table. Of course, when he came out, one of the other accessories, by the way, that Freddy does come with is a chef hat. Doesn't sit well. You kind of have to find the right side to it to get it to sit on his head. Again, not the easiest by any. One of the hardest things about this figure to change is actually getting the blasted hat on his head. Like so. White Chef Boyardee! But anyways, yeah, he does have. I would normally have him displayed with the spoon, with the spooned glove. It just so happened that when I packed him away, I thought, you know what, I better take the glove off just in case. Because unfortunately, with the later released, I'm just going to put Freddy there for a second. With the later released figures, unfortunately, his glove blades are extremely fragile. One of the things that I was most worried about, because it's not really as much of a pliable rubber as we've gotten with some of the NECA figures, for example. Yeah, you definitely have to be careful getting these Freddys. Putting them away, packing them away, making sure that these blades aren't going to break on you. And then lastly, I guess his other accessory, he does come with a little baby Freddy. Little tiny baby Freddy. I prefer, I don't want to do the comparisons of really apples to apples, but I prefer the baby Freddy that came with the NECA version, but still, I think Mezco, as a first attempt doing this, I think did a pretty good job on the little baby Freddy. It has absolutely no articulation, not even in the head or anything. It's just a PVC piece. But still, it's nicely detailed. Now, in the way of Freddy's articulation, why Freddy does have a ball-jointed head. This Freddy has the ball-jointed head in his head rather than in his neck. So you get a lot of movement there. He does have hinged pin and socket shoulders, but you can't really stick them out too far, as I find the sculpt of the shoulders kind of interfere. He does have, let's zoom the camera in a bit, he does have hinged elbows, rotation and a hinge in the hands, and then he also has a slight swivel in the waist. That's it. That's all you're going to get. I would say probably of the Mezco line of Freddys, this one I think I like a little bit more than Tuxedo Freddy, but he's definitely not one of my favorites. I'm curious to see if NECA's going to get an attempt and release a version of this particular Freddy. If so, I will obviously pick it up, but if not, I mean, he still holds up rather well to put sculpted or to put posed on your shelf along with those other Freddy figures. If you can find him, likely now it's unfortunately in aftermarket like eBay and whatnot, but if you can find him, I would say he's still worth picking up. He's not one of my favorite Freddys, and he's definitely from one of the worst Nightmare on Elm Streets out there. But I would think as a sculpt and overall execution, I think he's done pretty well. I'm going to give him a 6.5. Just like that. Today's throwback, Spot was having a look at the Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, actually, he was looking at Mezco Cinema Fear Series 3, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. Today we're having a look at Chef Freddy. Thanks for watching, guys. Certainly stick around. There are still more toy spots, and Spot's going to go back and try to do throwbacks on some of these other older figures, so stay tuned for that. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.